Welcome back to Stop Fainting Snippets. So, one of the biggest issues that we have, that our patients have, and they talk to us and they express to us, is the uncertainty of living with a chronic illness like syncope. The uncertainty that they don't know when they could have a syncopal episode, which can be humiliating, embarrassing, and harmful. And a lot of patients say to me, well, how do I manage that? Because that is what's so debilitating, and it's the fear of syncope that can be worse than the syncope itself to stop people going out. And obviously we have our strategies about preventing it from happening, like fluids and salt and compression. But what are your thoughts on how we can advise our patients, or how our patients can live with that fear, which is very real? Is that something that people have to live with?
I think where I see it mostly, I think with some of our new patients who talk about the way they talk about syncope, they'll talk about attacks, or they'll talk about something happening from the outside. It can happen any time, and would it happen going into this lift? They're not sure what's triggered it. They're not sure why it's happening. They're not sure what they can do to prevent it. In fact, they very often think that they can't. There's nothing they can do, and that just builds the fear. And I think that one of the best things we can do in trying to empower them and trying to alleviate some of that uncertainty and the fear that comes with that, fear of leaving the house, fear of being left on their own. You hear a lot about people talking about, well, I live on my own, so therefore it's even more particular, is understanding actually what's happening. So even though we can't guarantee exactly what, when it might happen, or guarantee that it won't happen in certain circumstances, I think understanding what physiologically is happening can alleviate that fear, because I think the fear comes from lack of knowledge very often, or from myths about why it's happened, or what it means about you, or what you can and cannot do. So I think one of the reasons why I think we have the Stop Fainting site at all is to help educate and help to empower people by giving them knowledge.
So Trish, talk to us about some of your experiences on the tilt table test, because you do thousands of tilt table tests, and we've discussed many thousands of tilt tables test results. And actually, one of the things you say to me is how empowering it is for patients to undergo the experience of the tilt. Because I think what you've said is they feel the onset of the pre-syncopal prodromal symptoms. Those are the symptoms that occur before they lose consciousness. And actually to be empowered to recognize and respond to them immediately, so that they don't have to faint or they don't get injured when they faint, is again a very critical part of the tilt table test.
Well, we had a perfect example today, didn't we, in clinic. Mel and I were just coincidentally seeing a patient together, and I tilted her, and she, without us asking about this, when Mel asked her how she was doing, and she said, well, I've had the test and it was such a great experience, because she was very fearful and anxious about
the unpredictability.
But the unpredictability and what was happening, and whether she says, is it in my head, and what she could do. And what she found really valuable on the tilt, and I think this is where it comes into it, is that we reproduced her symptoms. And so she could be sure that we were seeing, or we were experiencing what she was experiencing. And she kept going back to the fact that I'd gone through while she was experiencing something, and I could reassure her that this is what she was feeling, those palpitations, what she was experiencing, and then going through afterwards, and she could actually see graphically and through her own experience about all her fears about whether that was tachycardia and a fast heart rate, or feeling particularly panicked about those symptoms and how those symptoms made her feel.
And also the fact that you were able to reassure her that she wasn't having a heart attack or something sinister or worrying.
Yeah. So until you're actually there in the moment with them and being able to say, yes, exactly, that I know exactly what you're feeling because I can see it, and you're experiencing it, and I can reassure you. And very often in the tilt, I will get people perhaps to do isometric counter-pressure manoeuvres, and they can actually see in real time,
benefits.
how it can head off them feeling worse. I mean, I've had patients that have bought a feint because I thought in that moment it's more useful for them to show how they can, by using isometrics, it can make them feel better. Or certainly, by the very least, by bringing them back down, they realise how those symptoms improve so much quickly.
I so often see patients who come to the syncope clinic who have had maybe 2 Holters, an echocardiogram, MRI scan, EEG of the brain, and who've come to clinic really seeking definitive diagnosis because none of those scans have actually caught the moment over 2 or 3 years that they've continued to faint for. So I think in this situation, the tilt can be very helpful in giving that validating experience as we talked about. But I want to caution everyone that not everyone needs a tilt table test. No. And it's not what we're advocating here at Stop Fainting. It's not something we would, if I saw a patient for the first time who had a single isolated faint on the underground on the way to work in central London on a hot summer's day, if the history was super clear, I wouldn't put the patient through a tilt table test.
But the key point is that education is empowerment, isn't it? And you can educate and actually have a look at our Stop Fainting snippet on why we faint, because we can explain that in more detail. And but it's the knowing why you've done it.
And I think it's a question of the fear. I mean, with this particular patient, we'd had a number of interactions with her, and it was the fear and the anxiety of what was happening. If this was, she had all sorts of things of imagining what was happening. And even though we'd have this discussion and she would take that on board, then she would come back to some sort of more fearful of some other catastrophe that could happen. So for her, I think it was really useful because until she actually was in that moment, she found that a changing point. For many people, it's simple discussion and that's fine for them. So I think, some people can take empowerment just by having that knowledge and reading something or being told something, or for some other people it's much more profound. They need that other step.
And sometimes it's the sense of being out of control that can be very frightening and uncomfortable. So we've talked in our other snippets about how to get the best out of your appointment and how to empower yourself, which is also very important. And as soon as you know you're in control of a situation, it suddenly becomes much more manageable.
But also funny to say, that your body is giving you that, it's really shaking you and saying, Mayday, do something now, I want you to do something now. And recognising what that, and channeling that sensation, say, okay, what did she say today? Yes, that I'm hearing it and I'm respecting that and I'm taking action. Whereas before I'd be so panicky thinking, am I imagining it? What's happening?
So that's not to say, just to be clear, that she will not have another syncopal event outdoors. It's to say that when she has it, she knows what to do. She's educated. She knows it's not going to be a heart attack or a stroke. And she has seen the data that corroborates her feelings. And it's to do with her blood pressure falling. And just that knowledge and that understanding is very reassuring, as we use the word validating. But, it doesn't mean that you'll stop fainting, Trish. It doesn't mean for the patient that life all suddenly becomes free of syncope. We still have to live life in any chronic illness. So if you've been knocked by a car once and you fractured your kneecap or you had a serious injury, it's a very similar argument that you should still get out of the house and you should still cross the road. Right?
And I think another thing about syncope is we know how common it is. So I fainted, I think you fainted, Boo. It's up to 50% of the population will faint.
Close to fainting. But you're right. I mean, up to 40 to 50% of the population will faint at least once in their lifetime. In the correct clinical circumstance, with a hot day.
And that really comforting to know that this is a universal experience that we've all had at some, a lot of us have had at some point.
Yeah, yes, indeed. I mean, I think it's just empowering. I think if it happens frequently, and for many of our patients, it's something that it's I did the chronicity, it's not just a one-off, but something that might happen more frequently, or it's something that you have to manage. And I think like many different chronic conditions, part of the challenge is recognising that it's something that you have to work at and attend to, and that itself is something that it is part of the process of coming to terms with. That, you know, we live in a society where it's all, you know, wash and go, that it's everybody's, you know, you don't have to think about anything, you just take off. And even simply having to think about, have I got water with me? You know, and about what route I'm going to take on the tube to work. Simple things that, yes, many people may not have to think about, but they may have to think about their blood sugars, or they may have to think about what they eat or what they can't eat, or, you know, or what they can wear. Everybody, most of us have something to manage, but I think we're made to feel somehow that it's only us.
And it's a problem.
And how many patients do you see with syncope? And every one of them, especially our younger patients, very often feel that it's only them that is affected, and no one else has that same sensation. People feel quite isolated.
That's a good point. On that note, thank you very much, both.
And you.